Okay, so taking you through chapters 10, 11, and 12, what we're going to be doing is we're not going to follow the order that's in the book. So, like all the Cengage stuff you've had, this point, we follow directly the order of the chapters. I don't really like how the order of the chapters are for 10, 11, and 12. So we're going to kind of do it a little bit different of an order. If you're following along in your book, this is going to be from chapter 11. So not chapter 10. So kind of go with me on this. And one thing you'll notice is that I don't have any Cengage assignments assigned until the very end. So don't worry about the Cengage assignments right now. What we're doing today is basically discussing the concept of NPV, and then we're going to go back and tie the stuff in. So the whole thing and the concept of what exactly is NPV. NPV is something that stands for net present value. So, like every calculator problem we've done in class thus far, we've done the exact same concept, which is, on the financial calculator, we've been taking what the present value of future cash flows are. Like, how much is this bond worth today? How much is this annuity worth today? So we've been doing a lot of those things. So it's, again, a lot like the things we've been doing in class. It's the exact same concept that we're trying to figure out what the present value of future cash flows are. We're just doing it with a much different application, but exact same concept. So NPV is very popular to use. It is the most common valuation method used in corporate America. So what NPV means is the following, is in layman's terms, if you have something that has a positive NPV, what that means is that is adding positive value to your firm. So if an NPV is positive, it's adding value. In other words, we would want to take on this project if this project has a positive NPV. If the NPV is a negative, then what that would mean is that this is not a project we want to take on because it's actually deleting value from the firm. And so the great thing about NPV is it's so simple. It gives you an absolute right or wrong answer. Positive, good, negative, bad. So it's a really simple concept to use. So if you look up what NPV looks like as far as the equations, this is exactly what it looks like. And what you can see on the screen is that it's the same exact concept. Does this not look very similar to other formulas we've used in the class? Like you're just comparing formula to formula? Yeah, this is not that different from what we've already been doing. The difference between NPV and everything else we've been doing is NPV takes into account all the future cash flows, then it discounts those back to a present value. And then we compare that to what the cost of doing this project is. So for a company, it might be taking on an expansion. It might be opening a new location, building a new building, investing in AI infrastructure. There could be a number of things that we're talking about here, but that is the same underlying concept of what we are doing. So how to do an NPV project? Let's say our interest is going to be 10%. And I'll put this up here. So what we are doing is the following, which is you see in year 0, we got a project that cost $100. And you remember very first day of class, we went over the whole lemonade stand example. This is the same lemonade stand example. The lemonade is going to cost $100, lemonade stand, between wood, lemons, a press, whatever the case may be. But your initial cost is $100. So what we're doing is looking at how long is this lemonade stand going to last? And we see it's 3 years. So in year 1, we're projecting that we're going to make $10 from this lemonade stand. Well, will we discount that back to the present value? So like on your financial calculator, what you'd be doing is putting 10 for FV, then you put 10 for IY, 1 for N, and then you're going back to computing your present value. So if you do that in your financial calculator, you don't have to do that right now. We've worked so many of those problems, you know what you're doing by now. The answer is 909, And so it's the exact same thing we've been doing. If you do it for year two, where we have cash flows of 60 and you discount that back at 10% interest, the answer is going to be 49.59. And so that is something that you are absolutely going to be looking at. So then we have year three, $80. You're discounting that back to a present value, and that gives you 60.11. So what you see is we add all of those numbers up. And when we add all of those numbers up, we get $18.79 of positive NPV. So would we want to do this lemonade stand? Yes or no?
Yes.
Not everybody all at once. Positive NPV, positive $18. We want to do it. Yeah, we want to do it. We want to do it. Again, it's a very simple concept. Positive, good, negative, bad. And that's all we're looking at in this case. Positive, good, negative, bad. So how do we do this on the financial calculator? So you have something on your financial calculator called CF button. Does everybody see that on their calculator? So if you get out your calculator, hit the CF button, you hit that and you'll see something that says CF0 on your calculator. Does everybody see that? CF0? So what you're doing on your calculator is when you put CF0 on there, you want to do 100, but make it a negative. So hit 100 and then hit negative. And then the very important thing, and I'm going to get the calculator up on the screen in a minute after we do work a couple of these. But the very important thing is that you hit enter, not the equal sign, but enter, like ENTER, enter. Hit enter and then hit the down arrow. And does everybody see that? When you hit the down arrow, you're going to get to C01. Is everybody there? Okay. So when you get to C01, you want to enter in 10. And then you're going to hit enter again, ENTER, and then you're going to hit the down arrow. So when you hit the down arrow after that, you see something called F01 on your calculator. Does everybody see that? That means the frequency of payments. So for what we're doing right now in this class, we are never going to change the frequency of payments. Our F01 is always going to be 1. So what we're doing is just going to go ahead and down arrow through that and go on to C02. Is everybody at C02? All right. So we want to enter in 60, hit enter, ENTER, then hit the down arrow, and then hit the down arrow again, and then you get to C03. Is everybody at C03? Okay. Hit 80 and then hit enter and then stop. 80, enter, stop. All right. So at this point, all you have to do, you've just entered in your cash flows. All you have to do is go hit the NPV button on your calculator. Does everybody see that? NPV? Just hit the NPV button and it'll say I equals. So we put in 10 because that was the given interest rate in the problem. Put in 10, then hit enter, ENTER, then hit the down arrow. And when you hit the down arrow, it'll say NPV equals, hit compute, CPT. And you should end up with 1878. You should end up with 1878. So the next one of these problems we work, I'm going to hook up the calculator and, on the computer so everybody can see on the screen. But for right now, what I want to do is kind of try to talk you through it rather than show you through it. And then I'll show you through it on the next iteration. So the next iteration of problems would be the following. So this was an actual problem that has come up recently. So especially in larger cities, what's happening now is you have cab companies that are buying a lot of either hybrid or electric vehicles. And they're doing so obviously because it saves a lot of money as far as fuel efficiency and everything like that. I don't know how many of you have been to like New York lately or anything like that, but if you've been to New York lately, you see a lot of cabs are like stuff like Toyota Priuses or Nissan Leafs or things like that. And the reason is, again, fuel efficiency. So this is an actual problem that came out of the Wall Street Journal several years ago. But what you're looking at here is a cab company is considering buying, new cars that are going to cost right around $200,000 for all the cars. So what we want you to do is figure out the NPV on this project. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes and then we will discuss. Give everybody about one more minute here, so I'll see some clicking going on. Beloved class, did you get an answer? No, let's go over this here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put the calculator here on the screen. So when we get the calculator on the screen, what we're doing very first thing is we hit the CF button. And when we're hitting the CF button, what we're doing in this case is the first thing I do is you can see I have, oh, you can't see it, can you? How come you can't see this?
Behind it? Yeah, maybe behind it.
Hmm?
Like the tab, yeah, the cash behind it.
It's the what now? How about now?
There.
Okay, nice. Now we got it figured out. We solved all the world's problems. So what we're doing is when I hit the CF button, you can see I have something in there from a previous problem. Just remember to do this. Make sure you hit second and then clear, because that will clear everything out of your calculator. That will clear absolutely everything out of your calculator. So that's very important, because what will happen is if you don't clear that out, and say like in this problem, we did 3 years worth of cash flows. Well, say you did a problem before that had 5 years of cash flows. Guess what happened? Those year 4 and 5 will stay in there. And then your answer is going to be totally messed up. And then you're going to wonder, like, what did I do wrong? So that's what we're doing. So the CF0 in this case is going to be what? 200,000. So we're going to hit 200,000. We're going to make that a negative by hitting the plus minus sign. Then we hit enter and then hit the down arrow. C01 is 80,000. So we hit 80,000, then we hit enter, and then we hit the down arrow. And that's where we get to F01, which is just the frequency of payments. It's just the frequency of payments. So we're not ever going to be changing that for the purposes of what we're doing in here. So C02 is going to be 120,000. And then we hit enter, hit the down arrow again. We're not going to mess with F02. Then we'll hit the down arrow again. And C03 is 19,000. And then you hit enter, and then we stop. So when we hit enter and stop, that's the point where we hit NPV on our calculator. And here it says I equals. So I'm going to put in, hold on, it's 4%. So I hit 4, then I hit enter, then I hit the down arrow and it says NPV equals, then I hit compute. So the answer is $4,760.75. So do we accept this project? Do we want to buy the cars? Yes, it's a positive NPV, so we would end up buying the cars. So that's what we're dealing with in the, context of this problem. So here is another example. Same exact problem. The one thing we did here is just simply change the numbers. So I want to get everybody used to it. We're gonna give everybody a couple of minutes and then we will go over and discuss. Greetings, loved ones. Do you have an answer? All right, so let's go over with this, okay? So we hit the CF button and let's kind of just go over this like we did all the previous problems. So our CF0 in this case, again, all the stuff from the previous problem is in there. So the very first thing we want to do is, again, hit second and then clear everything out. Because when we hit second and clear everything out, that means everything from the previous problem is gone. We have a clean slate. We can start all over. So our CF0 in this case is going to be 100,000. We're going to hit the plus minus sign to make that a negative. Then we hit enter and then the down arrow. Our C01 is 30,000. Then we hit enter and then we hit the down arrow twice. Because again, we're not changing F01. C02 is 50,000. We hit enter and then we hit the down arrow twice. C03 is 35,000. And then we hit enter and then we stop. So then we go to NPV equals, and our I equals in this case is 4, same as last problem. We hit enter, hit the down arrow, NPV equals, hit compute, and the answer is 6,188. So are we going to accept this project? Are we going to buy the cars? Yeah, we are. So that is, what we are doing with this. So here is the concept of what we're looking at in regards to NPV. So what we're taking is the cost of a project and subtracting it from the present value of all future cash flows. What this tells us, like we went over the very, very first when we went over this tells us how much value we've added to the company. So in this last problem, we added, what was it, 6,800 and something dollars. That is the value added to the company by taking on this project. And so what we're doing here is looking at this in terms of, oh, what value did this add to us as a company, as a firm? So that's what we're dealing with. So anyways, then we get into the issue of, let's say like in real world, if you're a business, you're not just looking at one project. You're probably going to be looking at a whole series of projects. And how do you know which one to take on? Well, can you just arbitrarily say that, oh, we're going to take on the project that has the highest NPV? That would make a lot of sense. What could be the problem with that? Anybody want to take a guess? What could be the problem with just taking on blindly a project with the highest NPV? Could have a very high risk. All right, because we did not take into account risk. That is definitely one. The second one would be, well, what if it has the highest NPV primarily because it had the highest cost? So, we have another project that had a little bit lower NPV, but also, cost half the money and half the investment. That's when the decision becomes, a little bit different. How do you start to pick between A and B in that case? And so that's where the discussion begins. NPV will tell you yes or no, thumbs up or thumbs down to a project. But when you're dealing with mutually exclusive projects, that's where the answer can become a little bit cloudy and you don't always know what the answer should be. So when we talk about the discount rate, and we've talked about the discount rate when we talked about bonds, annuities, retirement, we talked about all these things and we talked about the discount rate. And so when we talk about the discount rate, what we're doing is, again, going over the same assumptions. People tend to be risk averse. There has to be, if there's higher risk, there has to be higher expected return. Nobody is going to do a high risk project without that expected return being higher. And so the thing is that what we're looking at here is the term opportunity cost. So you probably remember from like economics, the term opportunity cost. Opportunity cost means the cost of foregoing the next best option. All right, it's the cost of foregoing the next best option. And so the opportunity cost for something like this can be something that, may or may not make sense based on what you're doing. But It is the real return on the next best alternative. Because the reality is, as a firm, theoretically, you would say every single positive NPV project we want to take on. But here's the reality. As a firm, do you have unlimited resources to take on every single positive NPV project you have? Probably not. Probably not. You know, and if you do, then you're in a whole different category. You're in a whole different category. So one of the things we look at here is called internal rate of return, or IRR. IRR is simply, if you ask the question, what is the interest rate return on this project? That is the IRR. So it is the interest rate return on the project. So here is the thing. I need everybody's like full attention on this. This is crazy complicated how you solve for IRR on your calculator. I mean, it's like crazy hard. Okay. Very complicated. So just everybody take a deep breath. Everybody, come on, take a deep breath. Everybody, deep breath. Deep breath. Okay. Now, I don't know how you breathe with that chain in your mouth, but that's neither here nor there. I don't even know how that's possible. I mean, you're lucky you're not a statistic right now. So anyways, everybody take a deep breath. It's very hard to solve. How do we solve this? Okay. On your calculator, hit the IRR button. Does everybody see that? Hit IRR and then hit compute.
Error 5, 7.1492.
That's it. How did you get an error? Oh, if you got error 5, what happened is your CF0 you entered as a positive, not a negative.
I didn't understand.
There had to be a CF0 from the previous problem.
We cleared it up.
Oh, you cleared everything out. That's why. Yeah, if you didn't clear everything out, the answer back was what?
7.1492.
7.1492. Don't worry, we're going to work more of these. You get another chance at it. But that is what it is. So basically, all you have to do is hit IRR and then compute. So now let's ask the question of why IRR. So here's the thing. Let's say you're a company and you're presenting your project to a bank or to a investor, venture capital, private equity, what have you. So the question a lot of them are going to ask is, okay, what is our rate of return on this project? They want to know what the rate of return is, because I mean, the NPV, again, the problem is the basis of comparison. But IRR is an apples to apples comparison. Project A gets 8%, project B gets 10%. So we know what that means. Everybody knows what that means. You'd much rather have B than A, all else things being equal. So the thing is that is what that gives us. So here are the issues. There are problems with IRR. So problem number 1 are non-normal cash flows. Now, here's what this means. The problems we've worked so far, like we've only worked 3, but they've all been the same iteration, which is you have, an initial cost of the project, and then every other cash flow is positive. Let's say that, for the sake of, argument, this car company, we only went out 3 years. Let's say we're going to keep the cars longer than 3 years. Say we're going to keep them 5 years. But in year 4, we were going to have negative cash flows because we're going to have to do a whole bunch of maintenance on the cars. We're going to have to, change tires, redo upholstery. I don't know, something along those lines. And we're going to have to update some stuff. So in year 4, we have negative cash flows. And then in year 5, we go back to positive cash flows again. So if you have irregular cash flows, here's the problem with IRR. Mathematically, IRR is the interest rate when NPV is equal to 0. So let me repeat that. Mathematically, IRR is the interest rate when NPV is equal to 0. So how I had to find IRR back when I was in college, we didn't have financial calculators then. And what we did, but they weren't nearly as advanced as they are now, is definitely previous generations. So we had to figure out IRR by hand and by trial and error. We would plug in an interest rate for NPV. Okay, NPV is negative. We need to make that interest rate higher. Okay, now NPV is a little more positive. So it's somewhere in between there. You had to literally trial and error the whole thing. So the problem with the IRRs and the irregular cash flows. When you have irregular cash flows, mathematically, there can be two different IRRs that make NPV equal to 0. And so here's the problem. Which one do you believe? So I had this old crusty dude that I had for this class when I was an undergrad. I'll never forget him. He was like 80 years old at the time or something like that. And, you could tell like, he was kind of, really old school, very hard, that kind of thing. So what happened was there were 3 guys that I went to class with. And I noticed, it was about class about this size, about 20 something people in there. And I noticed, man, these 3 guys, man, they aren't here and it's test day. It's not good. So anyways, I do my test and all that. And then I see them out in the parking lot as I'm about to leave. And they're like, oh man, we forgot about the test. We're screwed. It's like, better go talk to them now. So they came up with this story. And here was the story. They were all riding together and had a flat tire. And that's what they told them. So this is before cell phones or anything like that. Well, we had cell phones back then, but they were like, the Zach Morris cell phones, not easily, concealed. So what happened was he puts them in 3 different rooms and he says, 1 question on the test, which tire? He got 3 different answers, so they all failed. So here's the problem with the IRR, circling back to this. IRR, if you have 2 different IRRs that are the answer, which one is the right answer?
Similar.
Huh? The one that's similar, well, they're going to be different. So like, here's the thing. One's higher and one's lower. Which one are you going to want to believe? Well, if you are the investor and you're the one sinking your money into the project, you're going to be like, no, I want the conservative one. If you're the one pitching the project, then you're going to be the one that wants the more higher number. So this actually happened to me. I got called in for a consulting gig about 2 years ago with a hedge fund that was looking to purchase a company. So what happened was they gave all their cash flows that they had, and they were a typical company, startup company, in that they had irregular cash flows. And they had 3 different sign changes in their cash flows over the last 10 years. So then they go report their IRR. And, of course, the first question I ask is, what were your other 2 IRRs? And there it looked like, and when I told them that, you could see that the guy making the presentation he just was like, oh no. It's like all of a sudden everybody else is like, what are you talking about? There's multiple IRRs. Then I had to go, basically I went on the board and just mapped out the explanation, the mathematical explanation of, hey, this is what we're looking at. We have 3 different answers here. So we got to get to the bottom of which one is actually there. Not surprising, they reported the highest IRR. And so what ended up happening was project got passed on, but they were basically trying to pull something, but most people don't understand there can be multiple IRRs. And if there's multiple IRRs, the thing is, it's like, well, how do you know what to believe? Because that's the thing. That is the situation. So why are IRR and NPV different? And so here's the thing. There can only be one NPV calculation. That doesn't mean we can't do scenario analysis where there are multiple NPVs, because the cash flows are, projections might be different. But if we're operating from one set of cash flow projections, there's only one NPV. There's only one NPV, but there could be multiple IRRs. So the thing is, our decision with NPV is if NPV is positive, we accept. If NPV is negative, we reject. So what we see on here is a couple of different things. The decision rule with IRR is this: if IRR is greater than your cost of capital, then you accept. If IRR is lower than your cost of capital, you reject. So our decision rules regarding NPV and IRR could conceivably be different if there are multiple IRRs. If there's not multiple IRRs, the decision rule will be exactly the same for both. Okay, payback period. Here's the thing, right? Let's say, TJ, you come up to me after class and you're like, Dr. Valentine, I'm in a horrible situation. I'm having to use 36 adapters to even charge my MacBook. I'm having to use all kinds of adapters. I'm worried I'm going to start a small fire and burn the entire campus down. Okay. And so you're like, if I can come and borrow $11 from you, I can go on Amazon and order a brand new charger where I don't have to worry about burning the building down. And as a finance guy, I have questions for you when you ask me for this loan. What are the questions I'm going to ask you?
Why do you have 38 adapters?
Okay, let's assume I don't ask you why you have 38 adapters in the first place.
When will I get my money back?
Okay, that's a great question. When will I get my money back, right? Anytime you have a buddy hit you up for money, that's always the first question you ask. Hey, okay, if I give you this money, when exactly am I going to get my back, right? That's what I'm looking for. When am I going to get my money back? That is what payback period asks. Payback period is incredibly simple. I'd only ask the question, when am I getting my money back? No interest involved. No interest involved. So if you say, I'm going to pay you back next week, I get paid at the end of next week, I will pay you back $11 next week. That's my payback period. There's no interest involved. There's not any of that involved. So that is what that means. So anyways, what we're talking about with payback period is in the absence of interest. So the good, it's simple. I could explain to a 5-year-old what payback period is. However, in practicality, how many people do you know outside of like maybe your family or very close friends that are going to loan you money with zero interest involved? I mean, anybody? No. You're not going to go to the bank and say, you know what, I just need some cash for a week. Would you mind doing this with no interest? Not going to happen. Not going to happen. So the thing is that here's the decision rule with payback period. And you can read this. Only projects with payback periods less than some pre-specified time horizon. Anybody, what does that mean? Doesn't that sound like legalese to you? Like it could mean a lot of different things and you're really not sure what that means. What exactly is a pre-specified time horizon? It could mean anything. It could mean anything. It's vague. It's ambiguous. We really don't know what that means exactly. So how do you calculate payback period? It is very simple. So for the last problem we did involving the car, what you're doing is your initial cost, or this is the very first problem we did. Sorry, this is a lemonade stand problem. Your initial cost is $100. So you see in year one, you made $10. So at the end of year one, you owe $90. And then year two, you have $60. So at the end of year two, you still haven't paid back $30. But in year three, we make 80. So at the end of year two, we owed 30. In year three, we make 80. So we know that the payback period is sometime between year two and year three. What we do to figure that out is just divide the remainder of 30 divided by 80. And that's what we get. The payback period is 2.375 years. So that is all we do. It's you're simply counting 1, 2. Okay, we got a remainder. Divide the remainder. 30 divided by 80. Then that gives you the rest, 2.375. 2.375. So strengths, again, a payback period. One of the things is it does provide a very good indication of liquidity. So, you know, it gives us an idea of, okay, do you have the cash to pay this back? And the other thing is obviously it's easy to understand. But what are the weaknesses? The weaknesses are the biggest one. It ignores the time value of money. It ignores interest, which is big. It ignores the time value of money, ignores interest. Second biggest weakness to payback period. It ignores any cash flows that come after the payback period. So in other words, that payback period might be a long time. However, if you're going to get cash flows for 5 years after that, that would make a difference. But, that's the thing, is that is why we have to look at some of the other methods. So then the other thing, NPV is a straight up wealth maximization model, which we went over like day one. What is the goal of the firm? What is the goal of the firm? To maximize what? To maximize stock price, AKA shareholder wealth, AKA shareholder wealth. So the thing is, NPV fits perfect, hand in glove with that, because NPV means that it is a straight up wealth maximization model. So therefore, that is why NPV is used more than any other. So there is such a thing as discounted payback period where we use interest rates. But the problem is the other two flaws are still there. It's still not a wealth maximization model, and it still ignores cash flows beyond the payback period. So when we look at this, in the real world, this was a survey. They did a percentage of firms and which of these methods they actually use. So you can see IRR and NPV are used far more than anything else. They're used far more than anything else. IRR and NPV are 76 and 75%. They're used pretty much synonymously. What you'll see in practice when you're out in industry, NPV and IRR are almost always used together. They're almost always reported together for that reason. You can see payback period is only used 57% of the time. Profitability index is something we're going to go over in just a minute, but it's seldom used. But we do go over it in class. You can see it's only used 12% of the time. We do go over it in class just because my whole thing is this. I don't want you to go out, get jobs, be in industry, and all of a sudden people start talking about profitability index and you're like, I don't remember anything about that. That doesn't sound like anything we ever went over. So, I mean, it's one of those things I want to try to expose you to as much as I can expose you to. That way, when you're out real world, you can figure out, okay, I remember a little bit about this. So, profitability index. When we're talking about profitability index, we are talking about specifically the profitability under the present value of the future cash flows divided by the initial cost. So what you're doing is you're doing something similar to NPV. NPV is the present value of future cash flows minus the initial cost. But profitability index is divided by the initial cost, not minus. So typically what we like is if the profitability index is greater than 1, it means we have a positive NPV and we should probably accept the project. If it's less than 1, it means we would reject it. So modified internal rate of return, or MIRR, is something that you will see a lot. So anyways, what we're doing with MIRR is a couple of things. Number one, so I have been in a couple of meetings before where I reported an IRR, and you'll get someone saying that, wait a minute, I did the IRR on Excel and I got a higher number than you using the same cash flows. That's because Excel uses MIRR. And what is the difference between MIRR and IRR? So if you look at the very top, what we're doing is MIRR discounts the future cash flows to present value using the discount rate. All right. And then the present value of these negative cash flows is then added to the initial cash outlay. So in other words, it will screw with your cash flow estimates and make them inflated. So what will happen is when you use MIRR, you're going to get a higher number almost always than when you use IRR. So that is why you don't see MIRR used a lot, and you sure don't see it reported. Now, you probably will see it like in a report or something like that, but one of the questions you would always ask is, hey, can I get your cash flow estimates of how you calculated IRR? Because there is no harm in trying to double check and make sure that, hey, we're doing the exact same thing. It's just like accounting. In accounting, within generally accepted accounting principles, you can use different methods of doing things. And someone can be working with the same set of numbers and the same set of financials, but get different numbers and estimates. Same thing here is the exact same thing. So that's why you want to be careful of. So what I was saying before is we're doing everything right now in a little bit reverse order. So what we're doing is we're doing 10, usually we'd be doing 10, 11, 12. Now we're doing 11, and then we're going back to 10, and then we're going to do 12. And so we're kind of looping back the order a little bit. But this is everything that we have covered today. This is everything we have covered today. So what we're going to do here at the end of class, I'm going to give some more NPV examples and let you go over them now. So what we're doing now is going over some stuff, but you can see this question is split just a little bit. So I'm going to give everybody a few minutes and then we'll discuss. So what you're doing essentially on the problem is how you're having to work it is your CF0 in this case is going to be what? You don't have it, right? That's what you're trying to figure out. So your CF0, you're going to leave at 0. And what you're going to do is your CF3, you're going to add the 16,000 to the 450,000. That's going to be your CF3. All right, so let's discuss this problem a little bit. So what you're doing here in this issue is you've got your cash flows where you're setting up of 16,000 a year. In that third year, you have the 450,000, then you add the 16,000 back to it. So when you discount that to present value, what you would be willing to pay for the building today is 409,323. So that would be what you would be willing to pay for the building. Now, all that being said, like real world application, you're going to try to negotiate that price as low as you can. If you can buy the building for 350,000, you're going to buy it for 350,000. It's just that 409,323 number. That's the max you'd be willing to pay for that building. So here is another problem. Same type of concept, but go ahead and see what you want to do with this problem. The answer to the last problem was 409,323. So when you compute NPV on your calculator, that would be where you would get 409,323. Okay, so what I just got asked was how to do the calculation. So I'm going to get it up on the screen real quick. So on the BA2 plus, what we're doing here is we're going to hit the cash flow button. Again, you want to hit second and clear. Your CF0 for this problem. Oh. Same problem, right? All right, let's see now. Now we're good. All right, let's do it. So what we're doing, the CF button, your CF0 is going to stay 0 because it wasn't given to you in the problem. So essentially what you're doing in this problem is you're calculating what your CF0 should be. So we go to C01 and we hit 16,000. Enter, and then the down arrow. F01, again, we're not going to change. So then we go to C02. We put in 16,000. Enter, then we hit the down arrow twice. C03 is 466,000. And then we hit enter, and then you stop. So then you go to NPV and I equals. What was our I in this case? 7. So we hit 7, and then we hit enter, and then you hit the down arrow, and then compute. And that's where you get the 409,323 number from.
So I is the opportunity cost every time.
Yeah, I is your discount rate every time. So what's going to happen with the problems is on the next test, as crazy as it sounds, the next test is going to be usually my test force 25 questions and 20 are problems, but 2 are going to be like 9-part problems. And you've already done, believe it or not, 3 of the parts today, like what is NPV, what is your IRR, what is your payback period. So you've already done 3 of the 9 parts today, although it sounds like, this is going to be crazy hard. So the part we're going to be working on when we come back next week is, do you remember on the last test where we used CAPM to calculate your discount rate? We're going to be using CAPM and a couple of other things to calculate discount rate. And so we'll have different discount rates that you have to calculate, and then based on those projections. So that's. So if we go to this, and here is the other example. So, and this is the follow-up to the problem we just did. If you have a building that is being offered at 350,000, would you buy the building? And what is the added generated value to the management of the building? So how would you do this problem in your calculator? You only have to make one adjustment. What would it be?
Change like one CC7 or make that first.
Make that the CF0. Yeah, make that the CF0. So your CF0 will be negative 350,000. You don't have to change any of the rest of the numbers. You just hit CF, and then your CF0 is negative 350,000, hit enter, and then go to NPV, and it'll say I equals, you hit the down arrow and then hit compute. And then that gives you your answer. And that should be your answer. 59,323. 59,323, and that should be your answer. So, real quick, before we get out today, I want to say I got 2 people that have yet to take the test, so I'm not making any comments on it, but Tuesday you can ask me whatever you want, I'll answer anything. So I just don't want to make comments, because I still got 2 people left to take it. Have a good weekend, everybody have a good Halloween, and see everybody next week.